the contemporary became perceptible in Indian cinema. Let us take a review of the film Sholay, which was definitely a blockbuster, but in my opinion, a reckoner of the facts that would be going to take place. What is Sholay? A acquired story of the unruly people in central India. But the students of film will recognize this as a remake of the Indian genre of the Western. You can compare and contrast with John Ford's Stagecoach and other things. But I am not going into that. I am more interested in the way of looking at the societal development and other things. Look-wise, for the first time in Indian popular cinema, we got a leading protagonist who is not decent looking. By decency, we mean a kind of look which was so available with people like Dilip Kumar and Devanand, with people like Shammi Kapoor and Rajesh Khanna. Here is a man who resembled the commoner more, with a person having no inner vest and not a very chaste Hindi utterance, rather a khari bali. They were two small criminals, came out of jail and now challenging the rule of law, and ultimately they won. What did that signify? That did signify a kind of historical moment when, to a great many, when order was injustice, disorder initiated by these two criminals, Jai and Biru, were beginning of justice. Remember kindly that it was 15th August 1975 when Sholay got its release within the internal emergency, when all the civil institutions got defunct, became invalid under the leadership of the central establishment in India. And that is why people found a kind of way of protest in Sholay. And what did Sholay depict? You find a confirmation of the extramarital love that is quite unnatural till then in Indian cinema. The love, the untold, soft, lyrical love between that Hindu widow represented by Jaya Bachchan and Amitabh. That is an important signifier in the cinema. And secondly, you first find a prominent gay person inside a jail, and he has been given due importance. People from all walks of society, comprising gay, extramarital love affair and other things, was included. And if you look at the villain, he is a man with human face. Usually we consider the villains as rapists, as torturers, as inhuman beings. That here you find a person almost like Ravana in the Ramayana, who has a human heart. Even if he inflicts injury to his neighbors, he himself bleeds. That is the central recurring point for which Gabbar Khan got immense and huge popularity. And you find Hema Malini in the role of Subhadra, herself running a chariot. You give a remembrance of the Subhadra Haran mythical tale. Everything happening in a time-space-lessness in contemporary India, and you buy the story readily. It readily becomes an Indian epic with a strong societal reckoner. I would say that from that period, Indian cinema, at least Indian popular cinema, got a kind of adulthood. And if you still move further, you find Om Shanti Om, a peculiar cinema where you discover Shah Rukh Khan, definitely another person with non-impressive face, but that is not the sole issue. Here you find a moment there where you are reviewing the entire history of Hindi cinema. The entire past has been put under a scanner, and you, along with the director, try to discover what is the way out. When you look at Madhuri Dixit in the 90s, what do you find? You find an Indian girl with apparent freedom, and freedom beyond frontiers. You find Madhuri sometime in Netherlands, sometime in other European cities, and when you find her inside an Indian apartment, there too, she is so thickly rich that you perceive that gone are the days when you were thinking of establishing a kind of socialism, a kind of equity among the Indian masses. Here is a strong, powerful metropolitan India where you can put your steps in tune with other nations. This is the birth moment of Bollywood, an empire which sounds as effective as the Hollywood, and you equally share the benefits of all the technological inputs. In fact, Bollywood cinema speaks of a different ethos, a kind of different oriental motif which was available in Japanese cinema or cinema of the so-called Southeast became so much available in Indian cinema. If you go down south, what do you find? In Tamil Nadu and in Kannada film industry in particular, I am not referring to Malayali, they have a different story to tell. But in Tamil film and in Kannada film, what do you find? You find gods, almost demigods, operating on the screen in the form of Rajinikanth and other heroes. They can do everything, but remember, they can do everything against the audience. Here is a political statement that in the south you have a different rule of the game. It is basically driven against North India. The Dravidians speaking against the North Indians in a metaphorical language largely not legible to the power class. This spectacle attracted the masses because they basically spoke of the masses, and that is why in South India politics is so dominant in films. You find all the ministers, chief ministers, and right from Annadurai to Jayalalitha to N.T. Ramarao and others in these two provinces, they are mainly from film area, because to the people, to the downtrodden people, to the Dalits, to the non-Indians, they represented the space of liberation. And largely these tales, though literary value-wise not very sound, could prove effective towards making the people enthusiastic about the power position. And that is why they got okay from people's sensibility. In Bengal, you find another development. The films which were mainly feudal, which were mainly dealt with the emerging consciousness in the city sphere, suddenly had to enter, because of the digital intervention, into the modern drawing rooms of the upper middle class bourgeoisie. Nowhere you would find Kolkata of the earlier days. You would always find the flyovers, the escalators, and the well-lit streets of the new town areas, as if Kolkata has suddenly turned into a paradise like Philadelphia or California. This is a kind of sensibility which is evident in contemporary India, because India is reluctant to remain in the hangover of colonial past. Another important issue should be discussed, that film was a kind of huge enterprise, a kind of industrial move till the other day. From 1980s began a period which was a period of budgeting. I would not call it low budget or high budget. It was budget specific, situation specific. When you shoot a Wednesday or Jab We Met, it's a different kind of situation when you make Bajirao Mastani or any other huge spectacle film like Devdas and others. Because people became conscious of the requirements of the situation and film became available with a huge cross section of the society, not only in terms of experiencing film viewing but also in terms of making films. That was possible, that has been made possible because of the new found digital technology, and it created havoc in Indian cinema in terms of creating new spatial parameters, in terms of creating noise free environment as far as sound is concerned, and as far as music is concerned, music became more available with the requirement of day to day living. Before that time, we used music and songs only as a replenishment, only as a maneuver to win over the people's likings or dislikings. You find Muhammad Rafi and Manna Dey speaking or singing almost unnecessarily. They were items. They had their own role to please the Indian audience because they liked to hear songs. Songs were everywhere in India. But nowadays, when you look at this cinematic screen, you find that these musics not only are a synthetic application of the global sound, but also suits the typical environment. Look at the Kazrade situation. It's a kind of synthetic appeal, both in terms of pictorial and in terms of acoustics. There lies a difference, and when you speak of contemporary cinema, you will see you are actually referring to contemporary India, and India much different from the Nehruvian socialist past. It's an India which competes with the global powers and feels happy when they are considered as third or fourth superpower eager to have a berth in Security Council. And there you are, and that is why our cinema now speaks of a definite presence in world culture. It sells India not in picture postcard quality but in huge albums. This is Indian life in 21st century in general, and this life is gaining importance everywhere among the NRIs in USA and UK, among the people who work there in so-called Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, in Singapore and other places, in Sri Lanka. They have a huge market, and in order to serve market, Indian films also regularly bring NRI characters and NRI locations. That is an important issue. Before that, in the 50s, we had Japan, we had sometimes UK, but those were merely museum pieces. Those scenes in order to exhibit something unknown. But now they have become a part of our life. As I was saying, that the frontiers have broken. A credit card has become more important than national card. So is our national cinema. It always tries to embrace the global and in turn finds some solace from the global, finds some solace from the local. You find folklores, new folk songs, typically transferred with the global tuning, and Indian songs that way has crossed the periphery of Indian Marga Sangits, Raga Sangits. It is interesting to note that in India, cinema always went hand in hand to record social upheavals and social changes. Just for a reference, look at Padmavat. the commercial blockbuster. Actually, if you go in between the lines of the film, you would find contemporary politics. The politics of Alauddin Khilji in love with the Rajasthani queen Padmavati has given a different turn. It's a long story, but put in another political context to generate another kind of relationship between the two large religious communities living inside India, and that is a huge impact. India is making a move within its constitutional rigor to locate certain things in certain positions. And if you look at other films also, say if you come to Bengal and look at Aparna Sen, Rituparna Ghosh films, you would find how the middle class has undergone a kind of metamorphosis. All those picture postcard reality within your drawing rooms, within your living pattern, in your short and long lives, you would feel that a different section of people emerge, which is a sharp difference with the post-independent generation. This is the generation X or generation Y, you may tell, but they have a different aspiration. That is the most important thing. And when they sing or when they dance, they are not tuned to typical Indian version of culture. Rather, they prefer a kind of synthesis of global and local. This local thing is the password of contemporary Indian cinema. That is the whole thing, because right from Dada Saheb Phalke's Raja Harishchandra, via Satyajit Ray's Pather Pachali, and all these populars like Sri Charshabish or say Jangli, you were within the domain of something which was supposed to be looked at, which were mainly exhibits. You saw them from outside. They were within the glass house. Now, film is very much, you are within the film rather, and you are discovering and inventing the film medium on the streets of Mumbai and Kolkata. Definitely you have other directions too. If you look at the Malayali films like Durga and other things, you would feel that in Malayalam, practically solely in the southern state of Kerala, you find films still which largely borrow its energy and its life force from the day-to-dayness of literature. Today, in contemporary India, literature has taken a backseat in representation, with the sole exception of Kerala. And I would say in Assam too, you would find some films which speaks of regional aspirations. After the signing of Ashu Accord, Assam that way has been continually speaking of a regional location, and it has come to demand its share from mainstream India. That is an important achievement. These regional aspirations has taken a front seat almost in tune with the rise of federal demands in politics. That is a key word, a key perception in Indian cinema, that today instead of having a center in Bollywood, you have several centers. You have centers in Hyderabad, you have centers in Tamil Nadu, you have centers in Thiruvananthapuram, in Assam, in Kolkata, in Punjab and everywhere. And you find different type of cultures taking their tolls, and what Bollywood is doing is learning from them and trying to accommodate them with the main course of dinner. Say the Punjabi wedding system. This has taken a central limelight right from the days of Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. In fact, what we mean by Indian marriage is today an extension of Punjabi marriage system. That's an important achievement. Before that, before the 1970s, we are not that interested in having our discourses with other regional aspirations. But now, we very much claim our relationship with the regions. In the 1960s, we have Kashmir ki Kali, but that was not real Kashmir. That was only landscape. Now, when you talk about Kashmir in a Vishal Bharadwaj manner, you see the pains and the anguish that the people of Kashmir feel. You feel the problem of integration. There lies our victory, and there lies the spirit of contemporary Indian cinema.